You reach for it without thinking. Rain starts, hand goes up, umbrella opens. 30 seconds, problem solved. You don't consider it technology. You don't consider it clever. It's just there, folded in your bag or by the door, waiting. But here's the strange part. For most of human history, this object had nothing to do with rain at all. It was one of the most exclusive items on the planet, something almost nobody was allowed to hold. 4,000 years ago, in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, a shade device very close to the umbrella already existed. Egyptian carvings show pharaohs seated beneath ceremonial canopies, held not by themselves but by servants walking beside them. In Assyria, stone reliefs depict kings shielded from the sun the exact same way, not for comfort, for power. Sunshade ownership was a strict hierarchy. In ancient Burma, the king held the title Lord of the Great Parasol. He alone carried white. Everyone beneath him was assigned a different color, a visible ranking system you could read from across a courtyard. In Greece and Rome, the shade was carried by enslaved people, positioned over the shoulders of noble women. The message was identical everywhere. If someone is holding shade over your head, you matter. If you're the one holding it, you don't. China took the idea somewhere new. By roughly the 4th century BC, Chinese craftsmen were coating paper parasols in wax and lacquer, which meant, for possibly the first time, shade could survive contact with water. This wasn't decoration anymore. It was engineering. And it's the earliest clear evidence that someone, somewhere, deliberately built a rain umbrella on purpose. So the object existed, the technology existed, and still, for centuries after, most of the world used it exclusively for sun, exclusively for status, and almost never for rain. Then Europe forgot about it entirely. Through the Middle Ages, umbrellas essentially vanished from the continent. No records, no widespread use, nothing. It took the Renaissance, and new trade routes reopening with Asia and the Mediterranean, for fabric umbrellas to reappear in Europe at all. An English traveller named Thomas Coriat recorded seeing his first umbrella in Italy around 1607 and wrote about it like he'd discovered something exotic, because to an Englishman at the time, he had. By the early 1700s, umbrellas had made it to London, but with a firm, unspoken rule attached. Women could carry them, men could not. This wasn't a minor social preference. Carrying an umbrella as a man in Georgian England was treated as an admission of weakness. Coffeehouses kept a single communal umbrella by the door for ladies stepping into their carriages. Cambridge University owned exactly one umbrella in the 1730s, and it had to be booked in advance. Like a library room, gentlemen simply got wet. Getting wet was apparently more dignified than looking soft. Then in the early 1750s, a merchant named Jonas Hanway came back from a trip through Persia, where he'd seen ceremonial sunshades used constantly and decided he liked the idea. He started carrying an umbrella through the streets of London, in the rain, as a man. The reaction was not polite disagreement, it was open mockery. Strangers hooted at him, people threw rubbish, but the real hostility came from hackney coach drivers, whose entire business model depended on rainy days driving people short distances to stay dry. A man who could just open an umbrella and walk was a direct threat to their income, and they knew it. One driver allegedly tried to run Hanway down with his own coach. Hanway's response was to beat the man off with the umbrella itself. For 30 years, Hanway kept walking through London in the rain with that umbrella raised, absorbing insults the entire time, and slowly something shifted. Other soaked, miserable Englishmen started noticing that the ridiculous man with the umbrella was also the only dry man on the street. One by one, they picked up umbrellas of their own. For a stretch of time, umbrellas in England weren't even called umbrellas. People called them Hanways, after the man stubborn enough to normalise them. By the time Hanway died in 1786, the war was over. Umbrellas had won, but there was still a design problem. Early umbrellas were heavy, built with whalebone ribs and oiled canvas, awkward to open, worse to close when wet. They earned an unflattering nickname, Gamps, after a clumsy fictional nurse who carried one everywhere. For decades, that clunky whalebone frame was simply accepted as the cost of staying dry. The fix came from a Yorkshireman named Samuel Fox. In 1852, Fox developed and patented a new umbrella frame built from fluted steel ribs, lighter, stronger, and far cheaper to produce than whalebone had ever been. This single mechanical change is arguably what turned the umbrella from an upper-class accessory into something an ordinary person could actually afford. Fox's steel rib design was so effective that modern umbrellas still follow the same basic structure over a century and a half later. So trace the full arc. An object built to mark royalty, so exclusive that the specific color of your shade indicated your rank, spent thousands of years as a symbol nobody but the elite were permitted to hold. It got engineered for rain in China, forgotten across an entire continent, revived as a strictly feminine fashion item, then dragged into male fashion by one relentlessly stubborn man who was willing to be laughed at, jeered at, and nearly run over by a horse-drawn coach for 30 consecutive years. And after all of that, the final piece wasn't a grand gesture at all. It was a Yorkshireman quietly improving the metal ribs holding the fabric up. Next time it starts raining and your hand goes for the door without a second thought, that motion carries 4,000 years of hierarchy, mockery, stubbornness, and slowly won social permission behind it. An object that once told an entire crowd who was powerful enough to be shaded now sits by your door, waiting for anyone at all.